Welcome to the Hoard's Dairyman podcast, your source for trusted, science-based information you can use in your dairy. Today's podcast is hosted by the managing editor at Hoard's Dairyman, Kylie Anderson. Our guest is Krysta Harden, the president and CEO of the U.S. Dairy Export Council.
From the days of hand milking to cleaning milking equipment and as machine milking was introduced, to all aspects of animal husbandry, women have played a vital role in the farm as well as representing dairy farmers in DC and around the world. Women have played a role in dairy's history and present and will continue to play a role into the future. In this episode of the Hoard's Dairyman podcast, we're covering women in agriculture and specifically taking a closer look at women's roles in the dairy industry. To guide us on this discussion today is a woman who doesn't forget her roots and the mentors who helped her along the way to some incredible roles in agriculture. We're back with Krysta Harden, the U.S. Dairy Export Council President and CEO. Krysta, I want to say thank you for being here and for joining this discussion that is near and dear to us as two women in agriculture who had the privilege of growing up on a farm. Before we dive into our discussions across the industry and the world, can you take us back to Georgia, where you were born and raised, and tell us a bit more about your background, the roles in your career, and the women who have helped shape you into the person that you are today?
Well, thank you. And it's great to be with you again and appreciate this opportunity to talk about something so near and dear to my heart. It really starts at home. There's no doubt about it. I was raised by peanut farmers in Southwest Georgia. Very proud of that. And the commitment that both my parents had to making sure me and my sister understood the importance of our family business, the business part of the farm, that it was critical. I remember my daddy so much riding in the truck with him, talking about it. You know, we love the land, we love what we do, we love feeding people, but we're also, it has to make a living. We have to make a living, and making sure I understood that part of it. I never really thought about staying on the farm. I was raised in a really critical time in agriculture where my parents would just, I always say, hanging by dental floss to keep our farm. It was in the 80s and it was so tough. My parents said, go do something but agriculture, because they just didn't see a place, and there was no place for women. You know, it would not. My daddy was very honest with me. He just said, you're not going to be accepted. And I took that to heart, came to Washington to work on Capitol Hill. And ended up working in agricultural policy, because I probably knew more than I thought I did, even though I didn't, work on the farm as a field hand or anything. But I did understand the things my parents had taught me, and the value of farming and of importance of farming industry to our country, to our world, but also really the honor of, growing food and nourishing people. And I worked on ag policy and did that for a long time on Capitol Hill. I was very fortunate, to work on the House Agriculture Committee. And when I left the Hill to work in the private sector, I went to lobby for soybeans and other oil seeds and pulse crops and our pork producers and all this group of people. But I really didn't have any women mentors. There were not women that I could really, very few that I could see was doing what I wanted to do next. And I was very ambitious and very committed to this career. So I started seeking women in other industries. It could really help me maneuver through Washington, maneuver through male-oriented industries, still remain true to who I am, but also be successful and be in leadership roles. And it was hard. And I just made a commitment that no young woman would have to do what I had to do, that I would be a role model for young women and for enlightened men to really understand what's needed to be successful in agriculture and the leading, whether it's, and I always say, women, kind of like you started with, the roles of women in dairy, but, dairy been doing agriculture with it in the barns, in the fields, on the ranches, or, in offices or around kitchen tables. They've been making the mind-bending decisions or the back-breaking work, in other applications. So it's not that women's role is new. It's now I think we're starting to appreciate and recognize their contributions. And all through my career, I just tried to do that. I wanted women to be heard and seen. Around the world, they have a lot more difficulties, like inheriting land and getting credit. in other decisions. So I've kind of tried to be a champion for that as well, and raise their voices and concerns. And also really recognize, appreciate the great women we have here in the U.S. Certainly we have it in dairy. We have such strong women leaders who lead every aspect of our organization, including my very own chair is a dairy farmer from California, Becky Nyman, the chair of DMI, Marilyn Hershey from Pennsylvania, two outstanding leaders, great farmers who take the time, give back to this great industry. I just want to make sure others recognize and appreciate that.
Oh, that's really, really great. And yeah, they're fantastic women that you mentioned there. So you talked about mentors, and you didn't see the mentors in the ag industry that you were seeking out. Can you talk a little bit about how you found those mentors and kind of that pathway and what worked for you?
Because I really didn't feel like I had the women, to step up and help me as much as I wanted to in agriculture. I ended up working with a group of women in the oil and gas industry who had similar issues. They were, older than me and had kind of paved a way for women in their industry. They befriended me. They taught me a lot. They taught me to be true to myself, but also to push where I needed to push. To be, consistent in what I did. I didn't have to be one of the boys I just wasn't going to be. I was a girl. But I learned how to play golf. I went to an investment, joined an investment club to learn some of the lingo on business, to learn about how to interact, to learn how to kind of broaden my network and to become a stronger leader myself. And when I was confirmed for deputy secretary, 4 out of the 5, one had passed away, were in that room. And that was many decades later. They still cared about me. They still coached and believed in me and supported me. And that's the kind of person I wanted to be for other young women. They were all in the oil and gas industry, very successful in their own right, and kind of paved the way for others, and still were there for me decades later when I was going through the biggest process in my life of Senate confirmation. That just shows what the network of women can do for women and how valuable it can be when we invest in each other.
That's really incredible and a testament to great mentors for sure. I guess, what have you seen specifically in, now that agriculture is working on more programs for mentorship and sponsorship, what have you seen for programs that have been successful? What are something you try to inject from what you've learned?
A couple of things. One is I'm grateful there's so many tools out there. The Dairy Girl Network comes to mind, and I've been around them for a long time and appreciate them. But there's so many. IDFA has a great program for women, and on that's the business side of dairy. There's a lot of tools out there for women. I think we're recognizing the differences that maybe women may need in entering the workforce, and certainly on the farm. I can remember, even though my mother was an equal partner in our operation, brought half the land to the marriage and a lot of the resources, there were salespeople and marketing people who didn't want to talk to her. And she signed every single note at the bank and has as much to lose, as my daddy did. And she was talked down to at times. I don't think we see that as much. I think we're recognizing that women are leaders that make decisions. Many times they're the owners themselves. So I'm so grateful for so many different tools out there for women. What I often tell people is, to be true to yourself. Do what you love and love what you do. And it's going to shine. It's going to show. And you're going to be taken seriously when you are that consistent person. You belong in the room. You belong at the table. You belong at the head of your business, whether it's a family farm or any other kind of operation. See yourself the way you want others to see you. And, continue to give back, continue not only to be mentored and coached, but you need to mentor and coach someone below you. I mentor so many people. I don't have time of the day sometimes, but I always give. And it's not just to girls and women. It's also to young and enlightened men who say, I want to be a better leader. I want to make sure I'm hiring women, promoting women. How do I make sure I'm understanding what I can do? So it's both. It's not either or. So I think we've come a long, long way. I think of all the women who are heading Washington offices now in agriculture, who are heading national organizations, including myself, The first time I was CEO of the National Association of Conservation Districts, there was one other woman in Washington in the ag group who was the CEO. We had lunch together, but it was a small table. Now, there's so many more women out there, and they're helping other women. Every June, I do a Women in Ag, just a little reception here at our office, and invite women of all phases in agriculture, young women who are just starting their careers, women like me who are at a different point in their career. And we have a lot of cheese and a little beverage to go with it if you're of age, and I'm inclined to do so. And Marilyn Hershey's bringing homemade ice cream this year from Pennsylvania. My point is, we support each other. That network is there for each other. We believe in each other. We invest in each other. And I think that's what is needed. And, there's some enlightened men around my office who come in to make sure they're, hear what we're talking about and seeing what we're doing. There are other folks who support us. It's having that sense of community, I think, is really important. I started when I was deputy at USDA, a mentoring group so women can know who to talk to, recognizing leaders and beginning farmers. I think we just have to be creative and look for ways to make sure we're helping women, particularly those who are on the farm who may feel isolated at times. They may be the only one in their community or neighborhood who is actively farming, so making sure they have each other. Women are networkers. They're just by nature. We talk to each other. We make, if I need a dentist, I call my girlfriends. If our haircut or a new dress, I'm going to talk to other women. We talk to each other about our problems and our challenges. And I think women on farms in particular may need that extra care. I just want to make sure we're creating opportunity and space for that to happen, and it to be encouraged, not discouraged.
I think that's really interesting. If you think of, you talked about the isolation that can really happen when you're on a farm. And I know I'm a part of many of these social media groups. And I think social media has really been an incredible tool for women in ag that, you might be in a very rural area, but you can feel connected in a group of like-minded people that are, doing similar things in different parts of the country. I mean, what have you seen in your career? What has that done for, the ability to network?
I think you hit on something very important, because that was not the case, even 10, 15 years ago. You didn't have all these different opportunities and tools to connect with people outside of just your neighborhood or your small town or your rural area. Farmers work so hard. They don't have a lot of time, so it could be they can get on social media after the kids are in bed and dishes are put away and animals are fed, and you prepare, you can go for, 30 minutes and share your concerns or your questions with folks, from around the country and even the world, frankly. Some of the women that I know that I deal with are way different time zones. They're the other side of the world. And it's great to have them, to compare notes to, and how we're going to lead and what can we do together to make sure we're raising women's voices. So I think social media, the ability, social media is not all good. I'm not going to say that it is, but it can be a useful tool, and it can be very, very helpful. And that isolation, that loneliness at times, or just, women get weary. They're tired. They multitask so much. There's so many balls in the air. And someone described this to me recently. Some balls are glass and some are rubber. I think women sometimes need to have, let the rubber balls just bounce for sometimes. Keep the glass ones in the air, the things they have to do. And I think reinforcing that for women who are multitasking, running businesses, running their families, doing other things, I think we can reinforce that in a positive way, that it's okay sometimes. And then they also have a place to go if they have questions, that nobody's going to laugh, nobody's going to make fun of, or have a complaint, that they can say, I was so frustrated with this. Sometimes just getting it, out in the air helps you. So I do think social media can be of a benefit. And of course, other in-person networking opportunities are helpful as well. And I encourage women to participate in those as much as they can.
I love that juggling analogy. That's a really, really good one. I might take that one.
You're welcome to.
Shifting gears a bit, the UN has declared 2026 the International Year of the Woman Farmer.
Yay!
Yay! This is an exciting designation, especially if you think about the role women play around the globe in all types of farming on really every continent. Can you tell us a bit about what USDEC is planning to do to help celebrate this year-long event?
I certainly will, and I'll go back just a little bit because I think it really is important to know that this took a long time to happen, and the U.S. was the leader. Some of the discussions started along these lines. Even when I was at USDA a while back, it was carried on, and Alexis Taylor, who was Undersecretary for Trade in the last administration, really spearheaded this effort to build a coalition around the world to support this at the UN. These things don't just happen. You don't just somebody at the UN say, oh, it's going to be the year of the International Woman Farmer. It takes a lot of work in coalition building, sponsorship, a lot of just awareness building for this kind of thing to happen. And, countries came together under Alexis and the U.S. government's kind of lead to say, this is a group that we haven't honored. We honor rural women, we honor other groups, but we've never got so narrow to look at the contributions of women farmers. I think it's just it's very rewarding for me to see this happen after my work and knowing so many women around the world who really are not seen. They are not heard. They are forgotten. They are overworked. They are not respected. And they are feeding their families and other families. And I'm sorry, this makes me so emotional. It is so real to me to look at the eyes of these women out in their fields harvesting or milking their cows. Also with, one kid on the back, a couple kids they're holding, trying to get on a tractor, and they're in a skirt because that's what they're required to wear. And the pedals are too far apart for them, to reach. So many different situations. And for the UN, for the world to say, you are appreciated, you are valued, you are seen, and you are heard, and we're not going to take you for granted anymore. It is raised by a strong mother who was 16 when I was born. And, knowing of her contributions to our family, our farm, our success, and to me and my sister, is for her too. It's for moms, it's for sisters, it's for grandmothers, it's for partners, it's for spouses, it's for workers everywhere. And I am just so gratified that we're finally saying thank you to this group of people. Half of the world's population are women. So many involved in farming who don't get the credit. Some can't read, some can't write, some cannot own their land, can inherit their land. They cannot get credit. Things in this country we just laugh at, really, So I'm just, again, I'm very, very, very pleased that we are finally saying thank you to this group of people who help nourish their families and others. USDEC, we're going to do, it's kind of what you're doing, a little podcast, for a 15-minute podcast where we're going to recognize women around the world. Certainly, I'm going to highlight my farmers here. You can bet on that. But we're also going to highlight women from around the world and have conversations with them, how they got into agriculture, how they got into dairy. So it will be an international, forum. We're joining other groups and led by Farm Bureau in a conference next year that's going to have one rich, I think, knowledge sharing, networking opportunities to really focus on this International Year of the Woman Farmer. We're going to do a number of things, small things, big things. Again, dairy's such a leader, and having leaders, women farmer leaders, it's kind of easy, from my seat, because I have it. I mean, they're here. I'm not going looking. I could do a conversation every day with a U.S. dairy farmer, woman farmer. I mean, that's how lucky we are. But I want to make sure that we're recognizing women around the world and their struggles, and kind of identifying the things they have in common with the women here or with their partners in other countries, but also those opportunities. I did this work at a lot of different levels, and every job I've been in, I have taken time to make sure that we're recognizing women's contributions, not just in the U.S., but around the world. I've met with governments, fought for their rights, a number of times in whatever hat I was wearing to make sure that, again, their contributions to this great industry, to food production, to feeding, nourishing the world, is on their backs. This is gratifying. This is a happy thing. A lot of things are dividing us as a world right now. There's always wars, there's always conflicts, there's always differences. This is something we should all come together and agree on and celebrate. That's my hope.
That's fantastic. I think that's going to be an exciting year of lots of recognition and overdue recognition. So you have been very successful in bringing people together from different backgrounds, not just by gender, but political affiliations. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us, even for men and women listening to this, because, they're leading teams either, in the allied industry or on farm. How have you done this? And what are some tips and tricks to bringing people together with backgrounds that vary so widely?
Well, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate the kindness. I always credit all my success, whatever level it might be, to my parents and my family. Growing up on that peanut farm by young parents, one sister, my parents worked so hard. They instilled in us just a strong ethic, commitment, our faith, our family, our farm, our community. I just go back to that. I've never forgotten that, how to treat people, whether they're in your walk of life or they're different, fairness. I just was taught those fundamentals that I just never forgot. It's basics. There is no secret formula. I think you have to know yourself. I think you have to understand yourself to be able to be a leader, a good leader. Know your weaknesses, know your strengths, not feel threatened by surrounding people that look or talk or act differently or may be smarter than you, which I do a lot. Using that as a strength, not as a weakness, but building on that is something I try to practice and to teach. I believe diversity of thought is important. I like people to disagree with me, to challenge me, to say, I think you're wrong on this, or you're blind to this, because I see things one way. I grew up on a peanut farm in Georgia, so I have a viewpoint on things, So not seeing that as a negative, but instead a plus, to have people that will challenge you, making sure there's different thoughts around the room, and working for an international organization is very critical. We have so many different first languages in our team, people who grew up with different cultures that can relate to customers around the world and consumers around the world. I think that's important too, to have that diversity of thought, challenge each other. And I also say, if you want to be trusted, you got to be trustworthy. If you don't want people talking about you, don't talk about others. It's just some fundamentals I learned as a young girl. We haven't talked about my 4-H experience, but that's another element that I think really helped me grow as a leader, as a young girl. And I'm in a rural community, feeling a little anxious about wanting more than my small town, wanting to stretch. I've always been ambitious. And 4-H gave that to me, competing at district and state level and even national level, and horses, going to, camps where I met kids from all over my state. That opened up doors to me and helped me understand that everybody didn't grow up like I did. So I really credit organizations like 4-H. It really made a difference in my life. And I was chair for 4 years of the National 4-H Council, served 8 years on the National Council, continue to support 4-H. So I have to put a plug in there for my work there. It's treating people the way you want to be treated. And, a lot of men do come to me, I'll be honest, and say, I want to hire more women or promote women. I'm like, well, why aren't you? If you can't find them, I'll find them for you, is what I always say. There's so many strong, great women. And it just takes, enlightened men. My team is very mixed, my leadership team. Men, women, different backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds. I think they make me a better leader. They challenge the heck out of me, I'll tell you that. They make me think And I think that's what we got to do. There's no one answer. I think we all have to, find our own style. But I try to be true to make my parents proud, make them know that their investment in me and in my sister was the right one. And I got to look in the mirror every day. I have a great husband who encourages me, supports me in everything I do. I just want to pay back for everything that I've achieved and I've gotten in my life.
That is really, really great advice. And I think that everyone can take that to heart as leadership tips and tricks. I do want to touch on, you mentioned 4-H and your involvement in 4-H, and I'm curious if you have advice for those who, there's going to be fewer and fewer working farms. It's just the reality that we have today and the economic situations. So if we're looking for programs that are encouraging females, especially those that might not have had a chance to grow up in a rural setting, what opportunities are out there for encouraging women and young women and young men to find their roots in agriculture?
Well, I think it's a very valid question. And, it's happening on Main Street with consolidations. It's happening in farms, like my sister and I are not going back to farm. My daddy died last year. So we're renting to a neighbor, that is what happens. It is so sad to me to see that. Again, we need more farmers, not fewer. I believe that. I will put another plug in for 4-H, and one reason that I have loved 4-H as an adult as well as I did as a kid is because there's something there for everyone. You don't have to be from agriculture. Of the almost 7 million kids in 4-H today, a third are from rural areas, a third are from suburban, and a third from urban. People don't think about it. The roots are in agriculture. There's no doubt about it, and that will be the heart and core of the love of 4-H. But there are kids in New York City, there are kids in Chicago, there are kids in suburban Virginia, where I live now, who are part of 4-H because it does offer something for everyone. STEM, it offers leadership skills, it offers community understanding, investment, and more kids. The kids that are in 4-H are more likely to be involved in their communities from rural, suburban, and urban. That's just one thing it teaches. So I will plug 4-H forever because I see how it has evolved to meet the needs of the current day kids. There's a lot of other programs out there that are community-based that kids should. FFA, I've been a trustee on that board as well. It is more centered in agriculture and in rural communities, and it gives kids the leadership skills are just phenomenal. Speaking skills, all those are so valuable. Y clubs have been very successful. Big sister, big brother, depending on where you are. A good friend of mine is the CEO there. He used to work in 4-H. He's phenomenal. There are a lot of programs out there. I just always encourage when parents ask me, look for what your kid needs. What are they good at and what are they weak at? Help them not just do the things they're really good at, and that might be athletics, but how do you make sure that they're challenged other ways? And I believe in community service. I think that we should also encourage our kids to give back, whether it's volunteering at a food bank, whether it's, working in a church program, helping younger kids. I think young people need to know how to give back because we get so much in our country. They have to figure out what is their role in service. I believe in public service. I may be old-fashioned, but I believe serving others is very valuable. My sister and my grandmother were teachers. My grandmother was on the school board. My uncle was mayor. We've always, just my family, my husband was a former congressman. We give back because we've gotten so much. And I think we all have to remember that. It is part of what makes our country strong is that service. It can be in your local community. It could be at a national level. It doesn't really matter. But the reward you feel from that. I did some volunteer work with the food bank in my part of Georgia when I was at USDA delivering food to communities. One of the most humbling things ever, to see little kids run out will never forget we had watermelons on the truck. Some of them didn't know what a watermelon was in Georgia. I mean, that's a staple food for me.
Yeah.
Something that, the parents said they couldn't afford. $5 watermelon. Giving back and seeing somebody in a station of life different from yours, I think is how you build good leaders and how you build good citizens. Yeah. Sorry, I get some of these issues for me are so heartfelt. This is why I do what I do.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. And it's, you think of the 4 H's, the hands to larger service. It's a really important H of the 4 H's.
Well said.
So,
I hadn't thought about it quite like that. Maybe that's what instilled me. Part of that was that motto that we say so quickly, right? We go through the H's. Maybe way, way, way back when I was a little girl, maybe some of that stuck. I like that. That's helpful. Thank you.
You bet. I'm a 4-H leader, so I'm.
Bless you. I didn't know that. For the listeners, we did not have this planned. I had no idea.
No. I'm a recent 4-H leader. So.
Well, the volunteers, someone told me a long time ago that every kid deserves 5 adults in their life that are not their immediate family, that doesn't love them because they have to or supposed to. That's one reason I teach Sunday school, is because I want to have those kids to have another adult in our church other than their family that believes in them, that encourages them, that teaches them. 4-H, I think, it's very much the same way. So thank you for your service and what you're doing for a generation that the leaders in a blink, they'll be the ones having this conversation before we know it.
Exactly. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, boy, we have talked about a lot of different things, and I know you need to keep your day moving. But
I do.
I just want to give you a moment to leave listeners with any final thoughts that you might have on any of the topics that we talked about, or more.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to really just have a candid conversation, a good exchange. I hope that listeners will take some nuggets out of this. One thing is definitely investing in our young people, investing in our young women and our young men to be the leaders of tomorrow in agriculture, recognizing it's not automatic. They don't just happen, that we have to nurture and care and build and invest in these young people. And our women may need a little more sometimes because they don't always get it. But I think it's young men and young women because they're going to be in charge very shortly. And I hope they fix some of the things that my generation has messed up. That's what I'm counting on them for. But then, helping our young people find their way in agriculture and women in particular. And take note that 2026 is the year that we're long overdue, as you said, recognizing the contributions of our women farmers and just saying a simple thank you sometimes to somebody in the feed store or in a meeting to say, hey, I know how hard you work and I appreciate you doing that. I hope that's what we're going to be amplifying across the world next year. And thank you. Thank you always. It's been a lot of fun for me.
This is fantastic. So thank you. This has been a great conversation and a chance to reflect on, what has changed, but also looking ahead to 26 when we can recognize the women farmers around the world. So, well, you've been listening to Krysta Harden, the U.S. Dairy Export Council President and CEO. Thank you for joining us, Krysta. There's a lot to be excited for the future. If you've enjoyed Krysta's discussion today on women in dairy, you won't want to miss the conversation we had on exports and how much growth has occurred in the last 30 years. If you want to be the first to join the conversation when it drops, make sure you're following us on YouTube or your favorite podcast so you don't miss a beat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Hoard's Dairyman podcast. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. And don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. See you next time.